Hello everyone. I'm going to try and dim the background here real quick and I'll be right back. All right, good. I think I turned off the microphone for that. That was weird and squeaky. Hey Joe, how you doing? Hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream. And as I discussed at the end of last week's live stream, I'm going to start a new project this week. I'm going to be doing a link spider because I think they're really cool. And so I just did some very quick search online right before we started today. So this is the spider I'm doing. It's not a super detailed spider, but it is very pretty and it's very green, and that's why I like it. So this is going to be probably more painting, some sculpting, and then a lot of painting to get that green color. And then maybe we'll see if we can play with some rendering and redshift to get that translucency. See how far we get with that. But first we got to sculpt it. But let's take a quick look. So whenever I start a project like this, I try and be very specific with regards to what species I'm going to be doing. And so after some looking around online, I decided to do, and I'm going to murder the pronunciation for this, so I apologize, Poussetia viridans. And the reason I picked this is because it's a green lynx spider. It's an American spider. But part of the reason is because this had, of all the lynx spiders, this one seemed to have the most reference imagery online. Doing a quick Google search for images on this spider, and I'm going to be doing a male. And generally speaking, I'm not an expert on this particular spider. I'm not really an expert on spiders. I'm an enthusiast. But male spiders tend to have the larger pedipalps, because that's how they deliver sperm to the ladies. That's technically, this should be blurred out if this is PG-13, because they basically secrete the sperm on their abdomen and then they take their pedipalps and grab it, and it's very romantic and hand it over. And then if they're lucky, they don't get eaten. So generally speaking, like this is probably a female, I'm guessing, because we don't see the large ends and the pedipalps here. But I just cracked open, if you get into this kind of thing, I highly recommend getting a key like this one, if you can get online. So this is Spiders in North America. Whoops, there we go. Something like this. And the reason these are useful, picture books are also useful, but a key is very useful because this is what people use to identify species, to find out if they're looking at a new species or something else. And the way that it works, you have these illustrations here, and you basically start looking at your spider or your insect, because they have them for all different types of insects, and you just kind of examine its features and try and figure out, if it's got this kind of feature, you go to this page and you drill down until you find the species. But what I love about this for creature designers and also sculptors who are trying to do realistic models or accurate models is just the illustrations are fantastic. Oops, sorry, I know I'm hitting the microphone a lot. So you get a lot of really cool illustrations and reference imagery. So keys are useful to get. So this is basically, and I had to keep holding that up to the screen because what I did is I took some pictures of the relevant pages and then emailed them to myself and stuck them here in my reference, my pure ref. So the family is Oxyopidae. I don't speak Latin, so sorry about the pronunciation. And specifically, it looks like this is a nice illustration. This is not exactly the same species, but it's in the same genus, so I think it works pretty well just as a beginning layout. since I'm not working off a scan. Yeah, I took a picture of one of them in Austin, Texas at a bug shop many years ago. It's one of my favorite pictures. It's packed away right now, and I'm slowly unpacking all my pictures and that kind of stuff. So I'll try and dig it up for next week. They're really cool, and they're very beautiful spiders. They're very, very beneficial. I took this image into Photoshop and just did a quick, made it symmetrical, cut it in half and flipped it over so that I have something that I can bring into ZBrush as a starting place just to get the basic proportions. You could probably eyeball it. I could eyeball it, but why not go for accuracy if you can, if it's possible. So I'm going to import that image. And we're going to you guys can see this is, I actually organize my folders based on taxonomy, which is a good way to learn taxonomy, because every time I go in here, I have to drill down through all the orders and that kind of stuff. So here it is right here. So here's the reference plane. And let's turn on the grid. Well, actually, let's get something going on here. I forgot how to use ZBrush. La la la, there we go. And then do this, and I guess we should do it from the top, right? Do it from the top. And then I'll go in here into the draw menu, brain no worky, and then go to up down, and here we go. And let's get rid of the gradient and the background. Something like that, and then we'll go into the draw menu really quickly and adjust the fill mode and enhance factor. There we go, something like that. And let's make sure, yeah, it looks like I've centered this pretty well. So for something like this, I'm probably going to start out with ZSpheres, why not? Rock it old school. And we'll start out with the head here. So just go in here and get my ZSphere. I'm going to switch to a white material so it's easier to see. There we go. Turn on symmetry, and we are ready to start. Scale it down. And there we go. And Q for draw. So I'm trying to make these guys symmetrical, so while I have symmetry on, if I move these guys close together, you see how they snap in the center there? That's how I know that it's going to be right on the midline. So I make a little one right there, and then for the abdomen, and then W for the move tool, W for move. I've been working in Maya all week on some Maya tutorials, and now my hotkeys in my brain are all screwed up. So Q for draw. E for scale. There we go. That part's simple. Hello to everybody showing up. Thank you for coming out today virtually. I really appreciate it. So, as we know, spiders have how many limbs? 10 limbs, right? If you count the pedipalps, it could be, if you count the spinnerets, it could be 16. It's 8 legs, 1, 2, 3, 4, times 2 is 8. Then we have the pedipalps, right? We also have the chelicerae, which you can't see from the top, but we'll look at our cute little face here. These are the chelicerae, these big old juicy fangs right here. These are the pedipalps, and then the legs in the back. And then we have the spinnerets, which will actually cast the web. They could be, I think, between 4 and 6, depending on the species. So let's make some legs. So Q for draw. Just going to make a really small ZSphere right here. Then I'm going to, select that ZSphere. Q for draw. I'm going to start drawing out, but I'm going to hold the Shift key, and that will snap the ZSphere to the same size as its parent. And then I press W for the move tool, and I can pull them out, and I don't have that, that kind of conical shape that you get if I just do this, if I just draw a ZSphere, and then pull it out, right? I get the big old cone, which is not what I want. This is going to make it hard to work with. So it's still going to be a little bit tricky. So let's do this. I'm going to go back, and again, let's do that. Q for draw, and let's just make 4 of them right here. Q, draw, and draw. That'll make our lives easier. They don't have to be perfectly aligned just yet, but we can get them kind of close. And now let's turn off the floor for a second just so it's easier to see. And Q for draw, start drawing, then hold the Shift key. That'll snap it to the same size as its parents. W for the move tool. Just pull it out a little bit for now. Same thing. Q for draw, start drawing, hold the Shift key so it snaps to the same size of its parent. W for draw. Isn't this guy adorable so far? Q for draw, start drawing, hold the Shift key. W. Q for draw, start drawing, Shift key, and then snap it out like that. Now let's bring our floor back, and I can worry about making these thicker later. I just want to get them kind of in position. So then I'm going to do Q for draw. I'm just going to draw this and then pull it all the way out like this, and then Q for draw, and I'll just add divisions right here for the joints. Let's go back here to this guy. And W. Pull the sucker out to here. Let's see, we need to do division right there, there, looks like right there, and then let's do this. Bring that out. Q for draw. W, pull him out. Okay. There we go. All right, so we have our basic I'm just holding the Alt key and scaling this out so I can scale the entire chain, make it a little bit fatter. So I'm going to click on this ZSphere to select it, hold the Alt key, and then press E for the scale tool, and then I'm just dragging down to scale up the whole leg. I know that's a bit more than we need. That's okay. You know, that's a good question. So the question is, after many years of sculpting insects, do you have any template base meshes or ZSphere blockout to start your projects? You always start from scratch. I've started from other meshes before, but only if it's going to be like something really similar. So actually, a good example is I had to do a number of isopods for this company in Australia, CDM Studios. And in that case, you know, isopod is a whole lot of legs and a lot of repeating parts. And the differences from one to the next wasn't huge. It was still significant, but I would start with that just to make things quicker. And then, you know, kind of do a little bit of kit bashing and sculpting to fix it. For things like spiders, I mean, to me, there's sort of like, this doesn't take very long. And also I'm doing this as a demonstration, so I kind of wanted to show my process. So in some cases, yeah, maybe if it's a similar thing like a fly, or if I'm doing a similar fly to one I've already done, or a similar bee to one I've already done. But there's also, you know, there's sometimes where it becomes more trouble than it's worth to adapt something that you already have. You end up doing just as much work, so you might as well. I mean, it kind of depends. It's hard to say. It depends on how complex it is. If it's a super complex, unique organism, then I'll start from scratch like this. But like I said, for the purposes of like the live stream, I like to start from the very beginning. Or like in the last project I did, which is the bumblebee, I used scan data. And scan data is a great way to start. You know, and hello, okay, behave here. Why are you doing that? Okay, it doesn't want to scale. It's just being kind of picky today. There we go. Yeah, but you know, that's just me. I think it's a good idea to have a template. I would be wary of using the templates that come with ZBrush. If you look into Lightbox, if you're into using ZSpheres, they have the ZZoo here. Most of these are good, but some of them, the anatomy is a little bit suspect. But it's a good place to start. I think their mantis is a little bit off. And I have a tarantula. So you could probably start with a tarantula, you know. I don't know. Spiders are pretty cool. Okay, so now for the pedipalps, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to press Q, select this guy. Well, we could do this. Let's just draw it right here. Actually, no, I changed my mind again. I'm going to select this one. And I'm going to use sort of the Dynamesh method on these things. So once I get the prepared portions blocked out in a kind of a basic form, I'll do a Dynamesh. And then I'll chop it up based on polygroups. Yeah, the thing that's throwing me off tonight is, like I said, I've been doing Maya all week, so now I'm thinking Maya has rotate is E and scale is R, and ZBrush has the opposite, but everything else is the same, so it throws me off every time. And let's see, these guys have pretty long pedipalps. They come out a fair distance. Yeah, look at that. They're pretty long. So do some of this. fix the joints in just a second. And then our adorable fangs. Floor's gonna throw me off here. Okay, now we got that. Let's put the legs in a better position. And I'm gonna scale these guys up because this looks kind of silly. Let's get something, kind of a medium pose here. Still symmetrical, but just kind of a, this is a little too gangly here. Yeah, these guys really got long legs. I may make the legs even longer. Let's do this. It's awkward teenage spider. You know how you can tell a teenage spider? It's because their voice always cracks. Okay. Basically, we have the coaxer right here, and then make sure we have joints in the right place. I don't try and be overly precise with ZSpheres, because I know I'm going to be cutting this thing up, and moving a lot of this stuff around as I work, but just to get kind of a general start. I also don't get very detailed with my Z-spheres. I don't spend a lot of time putting a Z-sphere for every little joint or every little thing. Because the fewer Z-spheres you have, the easier it is to work with once you convert it into a mesh. And you're not, you don't want to be tied down to too much while, early on. You just want to get kind of the basic things started. Z-spheres are pretty fast to work with, so that's why I like them. I am still chilling in France, and probably will be for a very long time. So, and I'm enjoying it. It's really nice. And the weather today was amazing. The weather the weekend was just amazing as well. But I also have to learn French. That's the hard part. Also, French people are very nice, believe it or not. Outside of Paris, they're wonderful. Oh, that is a really good question, Comics Legend. That is exactly the cheat that I do, and that's also why I don't spend a whole lot of time trying to get the Z-sphere version. I'm just trying to get these kind of placed. But then what I'll do is you'll see I'll chop it up, and in the Dynamesh mode, we're using polygroups, and then I'll spend a lot of time on one pair of legs. And then eventually, if they're similar enough, which I think they should be for this guy, yeah, I'll copy that pair of legs and just duplicate it as another subtool and get rid of the other legs as just because they're just temporary. Because it really doesn't make sense to try and sculpt these things perfectly matching, especially if they're really similar. The exceptions would be like with a bee, because each pair of legs can be pretty different. The front legs and the mid legs are somewhat similar, but for a lot of bees, the hind legs are very, very different. But ants, yeah, definitely. There's only a few ants where I can't think of any off the top of my head where their legs are totally different. Praying mantis, the front legs are going to be very different from the other ones. So, but yeah, for this guy, I'm definitely going to do that. I might even do it more than once, depending on how much work I put into it. Oh, actually, in France, it's pretty amazing. I was in LA for 20 years, and LA bugs are okay, but it's so dry there that sometimes it's just like impossible to see anything. I go out in my own backyard, I'd be like really disappointed. Here in France, we're seeing a lot of bugs and seeing a lot of bumblebees. Bumblebees were hard to see in LA, and it's mostly because they've been pushed out or they've been outcompeted by honeybees. Honeybees in the United States, of course, are actually an invasive species. They were brought over by human beings, and so a lot of the native bees struggle when they're competing with the honeybees. But here, I think since honeybees are native, they have a bit more of an equilibrium. So I see a lot of really beautiful, big old fat bumblebees. I see a lot of cool wasps. I have some really neat wasps. There are actually Japanese hornets here too. The giant invasive Japanese hornets are definitely here. And generally speaking, yeah, there's more bugs here than what I experienced in LA. Of course, on the East Coast of the United States, the bugs are crazy. And then with the East Coast, we also have mosquitoes. There's some mosquitoes here, but it's not too bad. But I have seen some really big spiders in my backyard here, which is really cool. Okay, so I might have made the legs a bit too long, but that's okay. Like I said, it's just getting something onto the paper for now. And then let's take a look. I saw a nice picture of the pedipalps here. I think that's a female. One thing that's annoying about ZSphere is, can you hide things? Hold on a second. Oh yeah, you can. That's cool. Let's hide these. Right, so we're not using. Forgot about that. You can hide ZSpheres. Okay, all right, so let's save this sucker and then we can start working in Dynamesh. I'm gonna create a new folder. I'll just call this P. Here it does. Alrighty. Okay, so if I press A, that's what it looks like as Dynamesh. It's nice because it's already got polygroups and they're symmetrical, but I think that's a little bit dense. So let's press A to get out of preview mode, and then go into adaptive skin. Let's set the Dynamesh resolution to like 64. Yeah, something like that works just fine. So I'm going to choose Make Adaptive Skin, and then what I like to do is I press A to go out into the ZSphere mode, and I'm just going to append the skin as a subtool. I just like to have all the pieces in one tool, and then we'll save this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start chopping this guy up. So I think I'm going to do this. Just holding Control Shift and clicking on this. That's the pedipalps. So I'll do split hidden. So now I have that as a subtool. And then I'll do the same thing here. Control Shift click on this, this, and this. Split hidden. Split hidden. Oh, green sweat beads are really cool. I love all the shiny metallic, brightly colored bees. The bumblebee I was working on the past few weeks, I'm in the process of rigging in Blender right now, which is first time I've rigged anything in Blender, so it's a bit different from Maya. So a little bit of a learning curve for me, but I think it's worth going through the pain of learning new software. So I'd like to do Blender more often in the future. seems to be where everybody's going, which I think makes sense because it's a lot less expensive than Maya. Let's put the abdomen there, and then finally with the pedipalps, they kind of got stuck as one thing, but that's okay. That's easy to fix. Okay, so now I have everything as its own ZSphere, and let's save this as next one. I guess I could do save incremental save. What else have we got here? What I need to do is, since I've been in the process of unpacking, I have my photography gear, which I haven't really used seriously in a few years. So I'm going to bust it out, and my wife has a really impressive garden going. So great opportunity to go out there and start taking some cool pictures of some stuff. It's just a matter of finding the time. Okay, so for this, I'm going to increase the resolution, Dynamesh resolution. Dynamesh, let's make it one. One polygroup, and then let's switch over to here, and let's find some good reference. So this is the cephalothorax, this guy right here. So it's probably a good idea to start from the top. This is going to be this kind of shape. And we could probably use our reference for that, right? Yeah, why not? At least this is the starting place. Like I said, this is a different species, so you don't have to follow it perfectly, but so I think this one is going to be a fairly quick sculpt because there's just not a lot of detail on this thing. I don't think I'll finish it all tonight, but it won't take me as long as the bee did. The bee took definitely took a while. So this is kind of flat. At this phase of the sculpting process, I'm not worried about topology, so I'm not going to use ZRemesher just yet, but I will eventually. What I want to do right now is just get all the individual parts kind of in the ballpark without a whole lot of detail, but being the right proportions and the right overall shape. And once I get there to the point where I start to, it's kind of like when, in my philosophy or my approach, and everybody has a slightly different approach. But I always, if you're in like a drawing class and you just start a sketch of someone, of a model, and you're doing the way many people draw, not everybody draws like this, but most people start with the kind of loosely sketching out the proportions, right? That's kind of how I see Dynamesh in that phase. And once I get to the point where I'm like, okay, I feel like things are in the right place, like if you were drawing, the point where you're like, okay, you want to start creating contour lines and that kind of thing, and that's when I would start working with ZRemesh. Switch over to ZRemesh and then start adding the details and subdivide it and that kind of thing. Does that make sense? But Dynamesh is great for a blockout, for a sketchy face. Okay, so take a look at this. One thing I'm hoping to do in the next year or so, because I do have a pretty big library of bugs now on my computer, is start actually selling them on Fab or TurboSquid or whatever makes the most sense, as models. You know, have them prepped maybe for like, you know, Unreal and a few, you know, other universal formats. So if people are interested in that, let me know. Because I have a few models that are sort of in a semi-finished state. It'd be a nice excuse just to finish them. Yeah, blocking with Dynamesh first, add detail with ZBrush and subdivisions. Yeah, so you'll see as I'm working through this, if you follow the project, once I have up to a certain level, I'll ZBrush it, but I'll ZBrush it to a really low subdivision level, and then, you know, to a really low point count, and then I'll subdivide it, and then add details, because there's so many advantages to working with a model that actually does have subdivisions on it. But that's pretty much my workflow for a lot of these things. Let's see if we can get a good picture of his adorable little face here. So we'll just quickly knock in. So I think I want to make this taller. And I think we can do that by pulling this part down. Whoops, that's supposed to be the move brush. He's kind of a dopey looking dude. He looks a little bit worried. Don't you think? Sorry, I didn't mean to call him dopey. But he's dopey. And just, whoops. So like at this point, maybe I'll up the resolution a little bit. And just kind of just make a note of where I want to put the eyes. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you. Thanks for asking. Hope you guys are doing well. It's a good time to be hanging out and ZBrushing and worrying about this stuff. So I'm just going to do this. That might be a little bit big, but that's okay. I can fix it later. I did a really nice spider for planetarium show in LA when I was there a few years ago. And it was cool because it was a planetarium show, so there's a nice big spider coming down. And for some reason, the directors felt that that would be upsetting for people, so they made my spider so small I could barely see it. Kind of annoyed me. It's like such a nice little spider. And then I did this spider, the opening title of Wednesday, and that was a walnut orb weaver spider. That was a fun one. I'd had to do that one really, really fast. Everything with that type of production has to be done really, really quickly. It's not like a visual effects workflow where you can actually spend weeks on a model. Sometimes you get 2 or 3 days at most. Like, you know, maybe 2 or 3 days to model something. A lot of times it's upgrading a TurboSquid model or something like that, which is not as much fun. But in that case, I got to model it from scratch. And I even got to pick the species too, which was cool. So I picked the walnut orb weaver because it has very Tim Burton-like zigzags on its back, which I think worked pretty well. Completely harmless spider though. What I'll do here is something like that. Again, I'm going to do this kind of quickly and not worry about getting any detail just yet. Detail is always the fun part. That's my favorite part of any kind of modeling. That's why I tend to do realistic stuff as opposed to stylized stuff. But, you know, I always try and prepare myself, set myself up for success by spending a fair amount of time blocking things in, even though I'll sculpt so quickly and try and make it so that it's easy to get to do a good job of the detail when I get to that part. Okay, so a little bit exaggerated here on the forms, but I think that's helpful. It's also a little bit tough because it's a very translucent model, so it's like a gummy bear, you know. You don't get a whole lot of detail there. And this part right here is nice. Well, as concept models go, this one I have to give credit to Mother Nature. She's the best concept artist that ever lived. Nobody can compete with her. But, you know, this is why I like doing this kind of stuff, because hopefully for those of you who do like doing concepts, it can give you some ideas on why it's important to go out there and consult with the mother. Back to nature. Okay, so let's call that good enough for now. And then let's do the pedipalps next. Of course, we're going to save this. Let's save next. And okay, I'm just going to do this real quick. Let's see if we can find, there we go. These guys are pretty straightforward. It's just a big old cone. It's a great portrait. I have a really cool t-shirt that Thomas Shahan designed that has all the various different different types of eye arrangements that you see on spiders. Do this. There we go. It's always easier to do when you have both of them. Just make sure that not get too close. These little gumdrops. Do this. I'm going to Dynamesh up the resolution a little bit. Generally speaking, there's little fangs that are usually folded up into these things I'll have to find some good pictures of this one. The illustrations I have are not great, but probably find something similar. Yeah, what I would do is, so this is an answer to a question, which is I usually struggle a lot on keeping the polys low at the beginning. I like to add details as I sculpt. Do you know of any piece of advice for that, or should I just get used to starting with volumes and adding the detail? Oh yeah, ogre face spiders are really cool. Yeah, I think what you should do is don't stress about it too much. In fact, what you can do is if that's the way you work, that's the way your brain works, you can still go with that. You can sculpt a fair amount of detail, but after a while, it does feel like you're sculpting with chewing gum if the polygon count gets too high. What you can do at that point is save a spot on the undo history here, and then use ZRemesh and ZRemesh to a really low polygon count, as low as you think you need. Then subdivide it and use project history to bring back that detail. But then you can go back to the lower subdivision levels and sculpt on, work out the proportions there. You'll probably lose some of your detail, but at least that's kind of going with the way that your brain works. Because I'm a little bit the same way. I'll sculpt a whole lot of detail, but then ZRemesh and use project history and then selectively wipe out the detail I don't need. But then you have the best of both worlds. Does that make sense? What I used to do when I first started using ZBrush, ZBrush before it added Dynamesh, when it was much less forgiving in terms of subdivisions, you had to be very careful because back then it was like you had ZSpheres and you had basically subdividing meshes, but there was no ZRemesh, there was no Dynamesh or anything like that. So you had to start with a box and just be very diligent about sculpting all of the detail you possibly could at that one subdivision level, and then subdivide and then sculpt all the detail at that next subdivision level until you couldn't get any more out of it, and then subdivide. Just be very disciplined like that. And that's a great way to learn how to sculpt. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to sculpt with the big shapes and focus on the details later, but ZBrush is great because it's non-linear. You're not trapped like you used to be. When they added Dynamesh, they changed the way ZBrush behaves, especially when they added ZRemesher and then projection and project history. All of those things meant that you're not trapped into one linear workflow that if you deviate from, you've screwed up and you can't fix. Now it's very easy to fix it. Just ZRemesh it, project that detail, or just don't worry about the detail. Just ZRemesh it, subdivide, and sculpt again. I mean, I know a lot of times when my mesh gets really messy, the details start to get out of control. I'll just ZRemesh to a low subdivision level, and I won't project the detail or anything. I'll just wipe out all that detail. But at least I have the forms there, and I can continue to work with it and subdivide, and do it like that. Being super disciplined, though, is good for the sake of doing it because it's good practice. It's like if you're playing music, the way I studied music, it was a very, very technical approach, but you would basically, if you were learning a scale or part of a piece or something like that, you set the metronome to a point that's so slow that you hardly ever made any mistakes. And you played it over till you could play it 20 times in a row without a single mistake. And then you move the metronome up one click, and then you do the same thing 20 times without making a mistake. Then you can move the metronome up one click. And you do that, and you'd find that you get faster. It's the same thing as if you work on a really slow subdivision level, work on those proportions and those forms, especially if you're doing like human anatomy, like this guy. That's a very disciplined approach, but it's not the only way that you can do it, and ZBrush is much more forgiving right now. So if you really find yourself like just having to work with a detail, then, you know, by all means, you can do it. It's not the end of the world. Okay, I'm going to pull this guy up a little bit because I think in my photographs, he looks a little bit taller here than this drawing. So I'm going to go with the photographs rather because I'm not sure exactly what's going on with this, if this drawing is exactly the species I want. But I do like the fact that these are tall. So I'm going to go make those a bit taller and a bit bigger just all around. Let's see if I can find a good image of the calicity. It's probably going to be hard to find because they're... Well, actually it's not. Right here, these are the fangs right here. They fold up on the inside. And the calicity are really in a cool shape. If I could find a good image of them. Let's see. Let's try the old internet. Well, I did a Google search for link spider calicity, but it's giving me all kinds of different spiders. Let's see if we can find it. Oh, there's a nice undershot. This is more like tarantula type deal, but at least you can get an idea of how they fold up in there. Here's a jumping spider. Let's see. Yeah, actually, a few years ago, oh, there's a nice picture. Not the right spider, but it gives you an idea of what's going on. I went to a bug shot workshop that was in Anzo Borrego Desert in California. That was really cool. It's a great desert, a really wonderful park too. But I was there with like this world leading spider expert. He was pretty cool, but really dry sense of humor. There we go. There's some nice pictures. And we just wander out in the desert in the middle of the night with flashlights looking for spiders. And I was with a lot of entomologists and scientists happen to be women. And despite the stereotype, they really are not that squeamish. They love holding the spiders and finding the spiders. And this one friend who, really nice woman and very intelligent scientist, or accomplished scientist, but also, you know, I have these great pictures of her just holding up these big spiders next to her face. This guy's ridiculous. Yeah, for this particular spider, it's hard to find a good image of the way that the fangs fold in there. So for now, I'm just going to have to guess. You can always fix it later. I'm going to get some volume on here. Yeah, I mean, I really like spiders and enjoy taking pictures of them and interacting with them. But you know, if I woke up with one on my face, I'm not gonna lie, I would probably jump out of bed pretty quickly. I wouldn't be like, "Hey, how's it going, buddy?" Um, and I've been gotten pretty close to some black widows in the wild a few times. You know, under controlled circumstances. Same with scorpions. It's unnerving. The scorpions are, you know, what we do is we get, so when I went to that bug shot workshop in Enzo Borrego, it was funny because I got a room in just this roadside hotel just down the street from where the park. And, you know, it was a fine hotel, but, you know, it's in the middle of the desert. And I had all my my gear ready, my camera gear and bug collecting gear and all this other kind of stuff next to my bags. And I got up the first morning of the workshop. We were supposed to meet at the park at like, you know, 8 a.m. or something like that. So I got up, turned on the shower, and the scorpion just crawls right out of the drain of the shower. And I was like, buddy, you crawled into the wrong place. And I was just really excited because I went and got a little bug collecting tube and managed to coax him into the tube. And then I showed up at the workshop. I'm like, I've already got a scorpion, guys. So that was kind of funny. So I got some nice pictures of that scorpion. I made a nice model based on him as well. But it is unnerving because, you know, we put him in a light box, you know, it's a light box, right? White box, and put a camera with a macro lens and try and take pictures of it. And they always just run as fast as they can right towards the lens. And that was unnerving because then you had to like poke it and move it backwards without touching it. So that was an experience. Yeah, it was bad timing for the but, you know, he's slightly famous now because I made a model off of him. I mean, as scorpions go, you know, he's not Scorpion King famous, you know, but he's on my website in CG form. It's good to go back and watch the Scorpion King with the rock because that is some really terrible visual effects. I'm surprised that movie didn't destroy the entire visual effects industry. This is so bad. It's really hysterical. You know, that's the thing. You know, I'm Gen X, so I grew up in the '80s, and you know, people are always lamenting as like, oh, we miss the world of practical effects, and CG has ruined everything. And I'm just like, you don't remember how terrible it actually was. Most movies had terrible special effects back in the '80s and early '90s. Really up until like if you watch The Matrix this Reloaded, I mean, that's still got some really cringy shots in there. But a movie with really good special effects was a rare thing. That's why movies like Star Wars and Jaws and that kind of stuff and Blade Runner were so exceptional because we were just so used to like going to a movie and just ending up making fun of how bad the special effects were because they were always so phony. And the example was like, if you go back and watch the original Terminator, I mean, that's some amazing artists for the time, but it's hard to get that kind of realism, you know, when he's doing that eye surgery on himself and stuff like that. At the time, I mean, that was just super amazing special effects, but most movies were terrible, absolutely terrible. So I'm just kind of guessing for now, but there's usually this kind of pocket that you can see that the fangs fold into and some teeth. Since I can't get a good picture of it, I'm just going to guess for now and fix it later. See if I can find some better reference over the week. I might have a book that shows something good in here, but I don't have it. So what I'll do now is I'm just going to duplicate this subtool. I just need some geometry, just a lump of clay here. Let's turn on dynamic symmetry. Not dynamic, local symmetry. There we go. There's a great book that I have called the Biology of Spiders that has some good reference here for these kinds of things. Let me see if I can find something real quick. Yeah, going on a collecting expedition with some real entomologists is a great experience. I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun, and you learn a lot, and you meet some really cool people. I mean, I made some friends that I stay in contact with years later, and it's nice to be able to call them up and ask them questions on various bugs and stuff like that. I mean, the people I meet are really cool. When I was trying to do the Phidippus mystaceus model for the Gnomon workshop a few years ago, I was trying to get a good view of the spinnerets, which is the part of the model that makes the here's a picture of right here. Makes the can I see that? All right, that's a terrible. I'm not doing a very good job here. Makes the spider silk, right? And so somebody put me in touch with the leading expert, the world's expert on Phidippus mystaceus, and I sent an email. I'm like, do you have any reference? Because I need to get accurate image, female spinnerets. And her answer was, have you tried the internet? Do a Google search. I'm like, thanks, lady. You were no help at all. It's unfortunate, but here's some, let's see if I can get this right here. So that's a good illustration of the bottom of the calycery, showing how the fangs fold in there for this particular spider. And it's going to be different for a lot of them. So that's why I'm being specific about it. But I think what I'll do is I'm just going to leave this alone for now. We'll go to the next, maybe the abdomen, and we'll come back and I'll fix that later. I'll just figure out what it is. So let's do the abdomen next. Let's save this. Here we go. And there's a few groups that will do that holds workshops if you want to go out in the field and hang out with some bug nerds, and they have them also for bird nerds and any kind of plant nerds, cactus nerds, whatever. But if you Taxon Expeditions is one. They're active in Europe. I've never used them before, but I follow them on online, and they're a very good group. And then Bug Shot Workshops is the one I always recommend because that's the one that I've had the most experience with. Did I lose my illustration? No. There it is. Okay. Okay, so this is actually not that far off. But also, if you have in your city with a decent natural history museum, you can find a lot of scientists there that this natural history museum will usually have workshops for members and have visiting scientists and photography workshops and that kind of stuff. So it's good to check those out. There's a nice side view. It's also good if you have kids and they're into that kind of thing. So this guy is kind of like, if you're in Los Angeles in the fall, late summer, early fall, they have the Spider Pavilion, which is always cool, the Natural History Museum. You can go wander around in a little enclosed area, and the spiders are right up in your face. If you like that sort of thing. They don't put the venomous spiders out like that, though. That would be silly. Canada. Envious, relieved I don't run into the critters from other countries. Don't you guys have moose just wandering randomly into your living room in Canada? I actually grew up in Montreal when I was real little, just for a few years. Too bad I didn't pay closer attention to my French classes, huh? Well, I've got no choice now. I know there's one YouTube channel, it's a Canadian guy. He's got an amazing number of followers, just like, I think maybe 1 million followers or something like that. And all he does is talk about the spiders that he finds in his house. And he takes pictures and videos and that kind of stuff. I don't know how he got to be so incredibly popular, but of course I can't remember the YouTube channel, but that's worth checking out. See, it looks like we have something kind of like this. It might just be color, but for now I'm just going to draw it in here. Whoops. And let's see if we could find some other views of the abdomen here. Some really cool colors in there. There you can really see the spinnerets on this guy. It's just kind of like a little sausage. This one, I think that might be a male. It's pretty thin on some of these guys. I'm guessing this might be a female if the abdomen is thicker. I could be wrong about that. I don't know if that's the same species though. I don't think it is. This one's probably female. And this is probably male. I think my blocking is pretty good for now. It's definitely kind of like all right, and then let's take a look at the pedipalps next. Alrighty, and then what I'm going to do is quick block in. Let's Dynamesh this, higher resolution. Now I got to pay closer attention to the number of segments in these shapes here. So I'm going to start by making a quick demarcation here. Kind of got the little bell-bottom jeans on this segment. Kind of a swelling there. then narrowing right here. This is kind of interesting right there. Is that an actual part of the appendage? Or just something that we're seeing in the background here? Nope. Looks like it's got a little finger there. It's definitely part. And this looks like... Let's see. That's 45:21. Yes, this is the reading channel. Watching a guy read. All right. I think I found a better picture. Only spiders, yeah, that's awesome. Make sure we have the right number of segments. Yeah, look at that. Let's flip this guy. Looks like he's getting down. Got a little finger there. Seems like it's off to the side. Again, this is going to look blobby and horrible. That's okay. I don't really care because I'm going to ZRemesh it and worry about making it look more refined later. Let's see, we got this segment right here. And it looks like we have a segment right there. That's female. Look, you can even see she has pretty little eyelashes, right? Sorry, it's very sexist of me, but you know. Men can have pretty eyelashes too. Yeah, I see a segment there for sure. I'm just trying to make sure that I have a decent image that shows the right segmentation here. I had one before. Let's go back to that one. This one right here. That's pretty obvious. Okay, we'll use that as our model. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I think a coaxer right there. So it looks like I might have too many here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And this one's too long. So let's do this. I'm going to switch to mask lasso. Yeah, thank you. And then do this. And then we'll do a little inflate right here. And then it looks like these guys come in from behind the calycery. So let's do that. One of the things I find interesting about spiders is they're basically, unlike insects have an exoskeleton with muscles on the inside that are in some ways not that different from our muscles, other than the fact that they're on the inside of the bones. But spiders tend to use more fluid pressure to move their limbs around, which is why a spider, when it dies, it curls up, because it's desiccating. It's losing all that liquid on the inside, and it gets less juicy. I always found that kind of interesting. It's also why it's harder to have, I've got plenty of framed insects, exoskeletons. Hopefully I'll get a chance to put them on the walls pretty soon. Beetles and katydids and moths and butterflies. But spiders is very hard to do that because they shrivel up. You really need an expert who's good at mounting that stuff. Or if you can, get a molt. But a lot of times, I have a big cave spider, but it's just, its abdomen's all shriveled up. It's just... they look different when they're dead, unlike bugs. So what I'm going to do now is let's make one polygroup from this, and then I'm going to separate this into polygroups based on the segments. So there's one. There's 2. Again, you can see I'm not being super careful about this because I know that they're going to change as I work on them, as I refine them. So I just want to get them close to the right shape here and the right number of segments. Now I'll do Dynamesh with the groups option on, and that separates these guys into different pieces. I'll keep the legs as a single subtool. I'm not going to make a subtool for each segment of the leg because that'll drive you crazy. I used to do that a long time ago, but I learned it's better to keep the leg segments as one subtool together. Then I have my mask by polygroup slider right here. So I'll turn that up to 100, and then it makes it easier. Or you could use the move topology brush as well to move these separate pieces. I'm just going to refine it just a little bit and then do a ZBrush. So let's do this. This I think should be more like this. And this should be more of a cone. And so this is a good example of like when you have, it's kind of, I mean, it's not super high poly model, but it's 88,000 points, and it gets a little bit frustrating trying to smooth out these lumps and bumps. So this is where it becomes useful to ZBrush to a low polygon count, because when you have that lowest subdivision level, it's much easier to smooth out and get these things looking straighter. Otherwise, this just becomes kind of a pain in the butt. So let's do that. I'm going to go to ZBrush and keep groups. And we'll do half. Okay, so I'm getting a remeshing error, so just remember to go down to mesh integrity, fix mesh, try again. There we go. Make sure we save. Tempting fate here by not saving. There we go. Get it down super low. Let's see. I still want. One thing I like about doing ZBrush rather than trying to do a hand topology is I still want to have an even distribution of edges and points here. I don't want to. It's more efficient, obviously, to have fewer edges in the middle here, but I'm still sculpting, so I don't want to have like a game topology at this point. I just want something that's easier to work with. So you can see this makes it much easier to smooth out the lumps and bumps and get more straight segments. Yeah, folders is one of my favorite features of ZBrush. Now, the only thing that make it better is if they could do subfolders. That would be fantastic. But yeah, I definitely, when I get this model a bit more in ship shape, I'll start putting things in folders, because that's also super helpful with Booleans. I don't know if I'm going to be doing a whole lot of Booleans on this guy, but when I do Booleans, I always use folders. And I don't know if you guys have used the interface on the iPad, the ZBrush on iPad, but it's really great in terms of the improvements on the interface. The interesting thing is they can't use hotkeys on the iPad. So they had to design an interface that's, I mean, I use hotkeys all the time on ZBrush. There's some people who use even more hotkeys for every single thing. But since they had to really be efficient in the way they designed the iPad interface, and of course now with like ZModeler, they have presets and that kind of thing, and that's really helpful. So I really enjoy using ZBrush on the iPad. And I'm sure that in the future we'll probably see some of those features come over to the desktop version as well. The other great thing about the iPad version is that the models are fully compatible. You can send them, you can even use GoZ to send a model from your iPad directly into ZBrush on the desktop if you want to. I usually use like Dropbox just because I always like to have an off-site backup somewhere. It forces me to make a backup. But it's a very cool thing. So I think with this segment right here, which I believe is the trochanter, I want to make this more like the segments coming out of it. I think what I'll do. The other great thing about folders, of course, is the fact that it makes it easy to move a number of subtools at the same time. Let's do this. Okay, I think I've noodled with that a bit enough. He's starting to look pretty cool. In this part, I do have a little bit of guesswork here because I don't have a very good image of how this segment works. So for right now, I'm just going to kind of have it as a placeholder. I think the legs will be a bit easier. I've done other spiders where I have a lot more information about what's going on under here, so I might have to borrow from those guys. Let's see if I'm going to save this real quick. Let's just take a look at one of my other spider models just for a moment. Just take a little break from this guy and see something different. I think I have a very old wolf spider model on here. This is from many, many years ago. Set this to all high, but I think here's a good one for seeing sort of the bottom, the chelicerae right here, and how these fangs kind of fold in to the chelicerae and these little grooves here. And you know, different spiders will come in at different angles, and that's kind of, you know, how they fold in makes a big difference in identifying the species. or at least the genus. But you can see there's the pedipalps in that one. And these are this is interesting. This is the book lungs right here. This is the slits, and the spiders actually have accordion-like lungs. I don't know if this is the one that actually has the interior organs. Yeah. Yeah, so this one I actually modeled just really roughly, but that's what spider lungs kind of look like. This was a cool model because I modeled the inside as well, but it was based mostly off of diagrams, so I had to do the best I could from kind of translated two-dimensional diagrams into a three-dimensional model. That's a wolf spider. Let's see. I have a jumping spider. Which one do I have in here? Oh yeah, I think this is... Yeah, this is the one that I did for the Natural History Museum. It's cool. It's got a cool abdomen because it looks like a tiki mask. It's mostly white. It's mostly silver, actually. That's a cool one. And you can see, here's another one where you can see the... and not a whole lot of detail there, but... And then... Let's see. It's one of my favorites, Nephilia clavips, the golden orb weaver. I saw a lot of these in Africa. They're really cool. This is a very old model as well, but very pretty. Let's see if we can find one where I did a better job on the Glycery. This is, I keep saying that because I haven't done spiders in a while, but I went through a big spider phase, as you can see. This one, another really pretty one. Kind of a goofy face. This is the Pedipalp mystaceus I did for the Gnomon workshop. I mean, these things are all going to look a little bit weird without the hair. Okay, that one's an old version. This is Pedipalp audax, which I don't think I ever finished this one. And it's got red and blue paint on it for some reason. That's a cutie. Anyways. That's spiders. And then this is one that I did a long time ago, but it's one of my favorite models. I really spent a lot of time on this. As you can see, 67 versions. And this is a emblypygid, or tailless whip scorpion. It's a big model, so it takes a few seconds to load. A really fun model. Let's see, I'm going to go down here to, oops, textures, and let me turn off the textures for a second. So yeah, that's this guy. He was a lot of fun to do. And for this one, I actually had a molt that is framed that I bought that helped out because in having the 3D reference right there, and I was able to take some high quality pictures. But look at the pedipalps on this guy, absolutely terrifying. And then I have some friends who actually have raised these guys as pets. They're not dangerous at all. They look like nightmare fodder, but they're not dangerous. But I do like this, especially kind of cruel appendage right here that is just, you know, if you're a cricket or something that's unlucky to meet one of these guys, this is what the last thing you see is being stabbed into your face and sucked dry. So there you go. Nature's lovely. Let's go back to our guy. And I'm going to leave the pedipalps there for the moment, and let's take a look at one of the pairs of legs. Let's see, I'll go for these legs right here. And so, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'll probably spend most of my time on this pair of legs and then just replace the other ones because I think for this guy, his legs are pretty much duplicates. They don't seem to be that different, maybe just slight difference in proportion, but other than that, they're kind of the same. And so I'll start by just up-resing it. Dynamesh. And just very quickly go in here with the inflate brush. Let's turn off mask by polygroups. Just kind of smooth this out a little bit and then make sure that we have the segments blocked out. For this one, I think I have better reference. Looks like we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 segments. Is this a segment? Not really. This looks like a little bit clearer. That's probably a pedipalp. All right, I know I'm muttering to myself. Sorry about that. So this is going to be the coxa where the legs attaches to the body. It looks like what I want to have is a longer segment here. Shorter segment here. Reduce the resolution on this. So it's a bit faster to work with because I think I got it wrong. So we got this segment right here. And then a longer segment right here, so straighten this guy out. And then I think this could be a little bit shorter. Oops. It looks like these are segments right here, but I think I'm going to keep that. This is one part. And then just kind of sculpt those segments in. So maybe something like that. And then inflate this a little bit. There we go. And I think I made the whole thing's got to shrink down just a little bit. Maybe not that much. Something like that. And I'm just going to polygroup this. And then turn on keep groups. Sorry, groups. Dynamesh. Let's do a little higher resolution. There we go. And just like I did with the pedipalps, I can go in here and start refining this. This one I think got a little bit too fat. I'll slim it down a little bit. Kind of like how these things are curved. And then I finish up tonight by just doing a quick ZBrush on these guys with the groups on. Few groups. That's probably good for now. Sorry for the sniffing. All right, so I'm going to leave it there for tonight. Let's take a look at where we're at. I need some posing and some work there, but you know. He's a cute little bugger. So we'll pick this guy up next week. So I believe I'm doing 9:30 p.m. next week for European time. It's 3:30 Eastern Coast and 12:30 for West Coast, United States. So I hope to see you guys next week. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for all the great questions. I really appreciate it. And we'll pick up the link spider next week. Probably focus on the legs there and other stuff. So see you next time. Thanks a lot.